Have you ever had someone disappear from your life without warning? A person you talk to every day suddenly becomes silent. A friend who seemed loyal slowly fades away. A relationship you thought would last comes to an unexpected end. And no matter how much you think about it, you can't find a clear answer. You replay conversations in your mind. You wonder if you did something wrong. You wonder if you could have prevented it. You wonder why someone who once felt so close now feels so far away. If you've ever experienced that kind of loss, this message is for you. Because sometimes the hardest goodbyes are the ones we never saw coming. And while it may not feel like it right now, there are times when someone leaving your life is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new chapter. One of the most difficult things to accept is that not everyone is meant to stay forever. We often assume that the people who enter our lives will always be there. But life doesn't always work that way. The Bible reminds us in Ecclesiastes that there is a season for everything, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to gather and a time to let go. Some people are meant to walk with us for years. Others are only meant to walk with us for a season. That doesn't mean their presence was meaningless, and it doesn't mean the relationship failed. It simply means their role in your journey may have been completed. When we look back, we can often see that certain people entered our lives at exactly the right time. They encouraged us when we needed support. They taught us lessons we couldn't have learned alone. They helped shape who we became. But once that purpose was fulfilled, life moved forward. The problem is that we often try to hold on to people long after the season has changed. We cling to old connections because they feel familiar. We hold on to memories because they feel safe. And sometimes we mistake familiarity for purpose. But God is always moving. He is always guiding. He is always leading us toward growth. And growth often requires change. Sometimes the people who leave are not bad people. They simply belong to a different chapter. Just because someone was right for one season doesn't mean they are meant for every season. Think about Abraham. When God called him to leave his homeland, he could not stay where he was and still walk into the future God had prepared for him. The journey required movement, and movement often involves separation. There are moments when God allows distance because he knows that where he is taking you requires different influences, different priorities, and a different focus. That can be painful, but it can also be necessary. Another reason people suddenly leave is because God is protecting you from something you cannot see. This can be difficult to understand in the moment, especially when you genuinely cared about the person. But God sees what we don't. He sees the conversations we never hear. He sees the motives we never recognize. He sees the future that remains hidden from us. Sometimes we mourn the loss of a relationship without realizing what God was protecting us from. Years later, many people look back and realize that a closed door was actually a blessing. A friendship that ended prevented greater pain. A relationship that failed created room for healing. A departure that seemed unfair eventually made sense. Not immediately, but eventually. That's why trust is so important. Trust doesn't mean understanding everything. Trust means believing that God knows what he's doing even when we don't. There is another truth we don't talk about enough. Sometimes people leave because they are growing in one direction and we are growing in another. Not every separation is caused by conflict. Sometimes it's caused by change. People develop different priorities, different goals, different values, different paths. And over time, the connection naturally weakens. That doesn't make either person wrong. It simply means life is moving forward. It's natural to feel sadness when this happens. After all, we are human. God created us for relationships. We are meant to love people deeply. And whenever love is involved, loss will always hurt. The goal is not to pretend the pain doesn't exist. The goal is to bring that pain to God. Psalm 34 says that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Notice that it doesn't say God is only close when everything is going well. It says he is close when our hearts hurt. Close when we're confused. Close when we're grieving. Close when we're struggling to let go. If someone has left your life recently, give yourself permission to grieve. Not every goodbye needs to be rushed. Not every wound heals overnight. Healing takes time, and God is patient. But while you grieve, don't build your home in the past. Don't spend your life staring at a closed door. Don't assume that because someone left, your best days left with them. They didn't. God's plans for your life are not dependent on one person. His purpose for you does not disappear because someone walked away. The future he has prepared for you is still ahead. There is also something beautiful that often happens after a season of loss. We discover that God is enough. At first, we lean heavily on people, their approval, their attention, their presence, and then life changes. Someone leaves, the relationship ends, the friendship fades, and suddenly we're left with God in a way we weren't before. It can feel lonely, but it can also become one of the most meaningful seasons of spiritual growth. Because when other voices grow quiet, God's voice often becomes clearer. When distractions fade, his presence becomes easier to notice. When we stop reaching for what left, we begin reaching for him. And that changes everything. One day, you may look back and realize that the departure you feared was actually part of your preparation, that the loss you resisted created space for something better, that the ending you cried over led you toward healing, wisdom, and peace. Not because the pain wasn't real, but because God was working through it. So if someone has suddenly left your life, don't rush to blame yourself. Don't assume you've been abandoned. And don't believe that your story is over. Sometimes people leave because their chapter has ended. Sometimes they leave because God is protecting you. Sometimes they leave because both of you are being led in different directions. Whatever the reason, remember this. God has not left. His presence remains. His purpose remains. His love remains. And while some people may walk out of your life, God never will. So keep moving forward. Keep trusting, keep praying, and keep believing that even this loss can become part of something good. Because when God closes one chapter, he is already writing the next one. And what he writes next may be more beautiful than anything you expected.